Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome everybody to a very special episode of the DevOps Insights Forum. The DevOps Insights Forum, for those of you who haven't been here before, we get a lot of repeat visitors, which we're happy about. It's a monthly open space for professionals to talk about software development, delivery, and reliability. And today we have a very special topic. Maybe you saw the press release this morning from the folks at the DevOps Institute. Maybe you saw our press release about this today. But today is the first ever review of the survey results from the 2022 Global SRE Pulse report from the DevOps Institute. So you probably heard a lot of people talking about the role of site reliability engineer. But who are they and what do they do? And what do they care about? Well, to learn more, we partnered with the DevOps Institute to conduct their inaugural 2022 Global SRE Pulse Survey. And in this episode, we're going to reveal those survey findings. We're going to discuss the mindset and the skills needed to manage site reliability, the practices that the teams are adopting and how they're adopting them, and some of the opportunities and challenges that these teams face. I see some of you already welcoming folks in the chat. Nice to see you. Thank you all for joining. I have a lot of great panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm going to start on the left-hand side of the slide here with Mitch. Hi, Mitch.
Hello, Sam. Good to be with you again. I'm Mitch Ashley. I'm CTO with Techstrong Group, who is working with Sam and Sumo Logic to put on this event, and also principal with our analyst firm, Techstrong Research. Great to be here.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us. Evelyn, welcome.
Hello. Yes, hello there. Excited. Thank you very much, Evelyn Ehrlich, Chief Research Officer at the DevOps Institute. Before that, I was Vice President and Research Director at Forrester Research, doing lots of research there as well.
Lovely. So glad to have you here. So nice to be with you. Bruno, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here again. Good to see everybody, and I'm seeing a lot of people coming online. I'm Bruno Kurtic, one of the founders and Chief Strategy Officer here at Sumo Logic. Sumo Logic is a cloud-native platform for observability and security.
Wonderful. Jane, how you doing, partner?
Hey, Sam. Hey, everyone. Thanks a lot. I'm Jane Grohl. I'm CEO of the DevOps Institute, founded in 2015. We're a free community and an educational upskilling resource for IT professionals. So very excited to share these results today.
Lovely. And last but not least, Shivagami, welcome.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Shivagami. I'm the Group CTO for IDC Technologies. I'm an SRE evangelist, and I do a lot of consulting on site reliability engineering and DevOps. Come with good experience in software engineering, having done more than 22 years at the Emirates Group, Dubai. So I'm very excited to be here.
Lovely. Well, we're happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And one of the things that was very important to Jane and Evelyn and team as they're thinking about not only the survey, but the readout of the survey is making sure that we got a nice broad breadth of input to this survey. This survey is a community-based survey. These are folks just like you who've answered. And we have folks on the panel that represent a lot of different perspectives around this because we don't want to have just one perspective. If you have a perspective, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We want to hear what you have to say. But consider this like you're eavesdropping or even participating on a conversation here with this panel. We've got researchers, we've got practitioners, we've got consultants, we've got strategists. And what are you and how are you going to join and add color to our conversation? So speak up. This is for you. Be respectful. If you're not, you'll just be kicked out. And share any feedback. If there's something that we can do different or better. Again, we do a lot of these once a month. We're holding these and we're seeming to build a nice community of people who have some opinions. And so we're super happy to have you join us. If you haven't yet, warm up the chat. Go ahead and let us know where you're joining us from so that we can say hello. Feel free to ask questions as we go through the content. But now I'm going to stop talking so much and I'm going to hand it over to Jane and Evelyn for them to start going through the results of the 2022 SRE Pulse Survey. Ladies?
So let me jump in and just share the kind of the origins of the report. So as many of you know, I come from the IT operations and the ITSM space, as does Evelyn. And, based on some of the feedback and some of the trends we've seen in DevOps Institute's annual upskilling report, we've definitely seen a pattern where SRE is gaining a lot of traction year over year. And I've been fascinated personally with SRE since the first time I heard about it several years ago, particularly because it represents an engineering mentality, it represents IT service management, and it gives IT operations, I think, a really cool place in kind of the agile DevOps SRE, software development lifecycle. So I'm very excited that this project has come to life. Today is a very exciting day for all of us with the launch of the report. The survey was received very well by the community, and so everything you're going to hear today is based on the input from the results of the survey, which was completed by just about 1,000 respondents. So Evelyn's going to go through the data with us. I hope you really see it as something that you can apply in your real life. And of course, you're welcome to download the report for free. And thank you so much to our friends at Sumo Logic for helping us found this inaugural survey and report. We couldn't do it without you.
Well, thank you for letting us participate. It's fantastic to do this sort of stuff with the community. All right, I put the question in the chat here, and so when I say chat, I mean all of you who are listening. I'm looking right at you right now. Please answer. We'd love to know, are you practicing SRE in your organization? With that, I'm going to hand it over back to Evelyn, I guess.
Yes, super. Thanks, Jane, and thanks everybody else. Of course, we cannot share all the details because we want to spend some data or some time on the key data. So encourage you to ask questions, encourage you to also download the report, and you can reach out to us, of course, through our Twitter handles or otherwise for one-on-one conversations or more. But when we started out, of course, the first question always is, what is out there, and what are people doing relative to? So our first question was, how is SRE, or are you applying SRE within your company, your organization and team today? And beautiful to see that 62% of those who we have surveyed said that they are actually leveraging SRE within their organization. 24 said no, they do not. So there's plenty of opportunities for those who may be here who are not yet in the SRE or on the SRE journey to listen in. And then 14% do not know. That sometimes happens, that people are not aware of, because it's you're part of a very large conglomerate or enterprise, and left hand does not know what right hand is doing. So for those who don't know, hopefully if you are here, will give you a chance to learn about it and understand it relative to what's going on. Sam, is it okay if I advance the slides? That way we can kind of go.
You are empowered. Yes, please.
Excellent. Love it. Love if you are empowering me. So those 62% are then the baseline of the survey respondents, of course, right? Those are the ones who can answer the question, for example, what are the top reasons your organization has adopted SRE? They are, and it's not that all of them have just done the top or the second one. It's to select all that apply. So many of our survey respondents said the first reason they are applying SRE, they wanted to reduce the service failure and the unplanned downtime. That costs a lot of money, as we know, in no matter what business. So that's certainly a great reason to adopt it. Additionally, improving the ability to compete with improved reliable services and offerings. So that's really in the digital age, where we want to make sure that whatever we offer to our clients, patients, customers, or citizens is actually there and reliable. And then third, improving the satisfaction with the business teams via reduced frequency and severity of incidents. The value of SRE truly for others in the organization, leaders in C-level, in our partner organizations, being a product team or sales or marketing, and that's a beautiful reason for adopting SRE, because sometimes, And this goes back to some of the work, of course, I've done over the last 30 years, that the faith in IT and the relationship between IT and the business has not always been great, and is significantly strained in some organizations. So improving the satisfaction with the business teams is excellent. A couple other ones, which of course are important, I'll go down here. Provide a great digital customer experience, as 41% said, is essential, again, for those digital first and for anybody else who is doing the digital transformation journey across all verticals. And because of that, as I said, across all verticals, we do know that SRE is not necessarily tied to any vertical. It is one of those topics which is in every business of all kinds of verticals across the globe. And then the last one I think I find also very interesting is the avoiding over or underspending on features. That has to do with, of course, SRE being somewhere in the middle between the understanding of those who are developing and those who are actually experiencing and consuming and operating, that there is some a way to go back and say, hey, there is a challenge here, or this is not challenging, this doesn't necessarily help.
Very interesting. I'm going to ask to pause for just a second and ask some of the panelists. I'm seeing some great stuff in the chat there, but do any of these surprise anybody? I think Mitch's point about being able to compete is huge. Do we think that digital customer experience number, is that going to rise over time? Is that going to become more and more important for people, as Mitch asked?
I think it's just the fact that it's there is huge. The digital experience that we're thinking about, the end result, right? What's the customer experience is great. So I was just kind of poking Bruno a little bit to get his thoughts on.
Yeah. Well, to me, if when you interpret and think about, sort of put yourself in the mind of a user who answered this, right? I would actually say that the digital experience, 41%, is probably a bunch of people who talked about improving happiness of users and improving user retention, that those are all related to digital experience. And the fact that this digital experience thing is maybe to some degree a little bit newer as a term, but we used to have all of the stuff that defines the digital experience. So I wouldn't be surprised if we reduce the number of choices and try to kind of put them together, that might rise even higher even now.
Right, because you can see that improved satisfaction, improved user happiness due to reliable software, that could be a great digital experience.
Yeah, and user retention, right? Yeah. Reliable software. So, those are all related to how people experience digital services that we build.
So Shivagami, at IDC, you're working with the SRE teams. What were some of the reasons, any of the reasons that you chose to adopt? Are they listed here, or are they different?
So mine comes from a lot of consulting that we are doing for various organizations right in this part of the world. Yep. So primarily, this is in agreement with what's happening here. So SRE is still very much associated with reducing service failures and improving reliability. But I think the overall scope, and that's what people touch in terms of digital customer experience, or that it is a key tenet for digital transformation, is that it is not just related to the operational excellence side, because obviously you're not going to get your highest reliability levels if something has got the deployment process is not good, or if even your software creation process, any part of your SDLC is not good. It's not that you're going to have operational excellence at the right side, which means we are really talking about SREs and their outlook being very, very holistic. So we are seeing a lot of SREs also looking at not bringing just the wisdom of operations into the left side, but rather also taking what can be done from a very developer or a software engineering mindset to the right side. So this is the end game, which is to give the greatest customer experience, but that's possible only when we look at it from a 360-degree view, and we look at that's why we talk about automation, we talk about SRE encompassing all the principles of DevOps as well. So this is a good representation of what's happening out there, I think.
Nice. Excellent. Evelyn?
Yeah, so we have a poll. We want to ask those who are listening into what is the current state of SRE in your entire organization? So if you give us an answer, that would be great, because we want to see what is happening. So if you could do that now, that would be fantastic. And we have a wonderful gentleman behind the curtain who is helping us on the polls, and I'm sure there will be some results in a few minutes. So thanks for those of you who are answering. In a couple seconds, we'll, I'm sure, see some results. Any other comments on what we talked about so far from anybody?
Nope. I think we're doing good.
Yes, I
All right.
mentioned toil, and that's a big thing about
Oh,
goals. So, here we go. Some
Yeah.
good
So here are the results. Take it away, Sam.
all right. So the audience here, what is the current state of SRE in your entire IT organization? We do not leverage is 20. SRE being piloted is 0%, which is really interesting. 40% leveraged within a team, 38%, and 30% basically across the entire organization. 0 have tried and failed. That's great, because in this world, there's really no failure with it. It's just sort of V1, right? That's fine, continuous improvement. And then 15% don't know, maybe work at large organizations and just don't have visibility. So very, very interesting to see SRE being piloted at 0, and happy to see that there's, it's a small percent, but still happy to see that it's a small percent. And the failure one, happy to see that that's a small percent too. Any other folks have thoughts on the results?
Well, it's very consistent if you aggregate again with the survey.
That is good to know.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Let's see what else we have. All right, let's move on. Of course, we also wanted to understand relative to what we just asked in our survey. So you can see here the very similar responses: leveraged within specific teams, products or services, 55%. SRE is piloted. So those who answered our survey, there was a little bit more piloting happening, and then 19% in leveraging the organization across the entire organization. If you add this all together, there is, I think, a couple of data percentages missing. I think 1% was saying they failed, they tried, but they have failed relative to their SRE work. Okay, let's switch a little bit on, go a little bit deeper in terms of what these SREs do. And as we learned, those of you who are listening in, some of that is all new to you, or you don't leverage SRE yet, either one or both. So we asked, please select which activities are part of your or your SRE team's job. Again, select all that apply. And here you can see retrospectives are certainly part of the activities, experimenting and receiving training and expanding knowledge, securing apps and infrastructure, spinning up new hosts, and doing load test and other capacity management activities. Those are typically, these are the top 5. There's many, many other activities those folks are doing, which are not yet here on the slide, but they're in the report, and you can look at it there. So I'll push it back to you, Sam. Any thoughts? Anybody? Any comments on this particular slide?
Let's see. Bruno, thoughts on this slide?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I am, reflecting on about 12 years of SomaLogic's practice. We kind of a very good experiment in the sort of evolution of not just the SRE as a practice, but microservices as an architecture and adoption of cloud and all these things. And as I look at this and I see kind of what activities people perform, I can see that our SRE practice internally at SomaLogic has evolved quite a bit, and it's changed over time. Like, if you kind of look back and I even just went and reread the Wikipedia for SRE and definition just to kind of like get a tickle right before this. And even there, it still talks about how, there's so many practices that people do. It's inconsistent how people think about it. Like the definition of SRE to a large degree is still evolving. And, some people think of it one way, some people think of it. And I think a lot of this stuff here is reflective of the fact that it's an evolving practice, even though it was quote unquote, 20-year-old since Google launched it in 2003. It's still evolving. And as it gets adopted, these things change as we get better at implementing it. The activities change. I'm a little surprised that there's not a whole lot of incident management and things like that. But anywho, I just find it fascinating to see kind of how this has evolved, even just internally at Sumo.
And I think one of the most important things, and Mitch just mentioned it, in order to evolve, you need to learn. Because what you're doing today may be perfect, but then the whole world changes, or your stack changes, or whatever it is changes, and then you have to change what you're doing. You need to evolve. And so humans are really good at doing that. Programs can't do it by themselves. So it needs some shepherding and some guidance from folks. So I think that's really interesting. Mitch, what do you have? Do you have any thoughts about this, the data on this slide?
It is super interesting that postmortems are at the top, and Suresh in the chat points out it's got to be blameless postmortems because it's about learning. It's not about finding fault, right?
That's right.
We can do cause analysis, etc. It's actually kind of woven in here is starting to be a theme of resilience too, and that's a topic in the SRE world of reliability, but also it's not just building systems, but the entire ecosystem where we run our apps and infrastructure and all of it. Trying to do that in ways that it can be resilient, not just fail less often, because failure always happens. It's going to happen. So how can we gracefully handle it better when it does?
So your users aren't impacted, exactly. And Shivagami, are any of the things on this list, do they speak to you more as a person who's out there helping folks with this most of the time here?
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting. So I thought there are a few things probably not reflected enough here. So one is, the key principles, like we say, is anything manual is prone for errors. Manual is evil. Yeah. So automation, automating the entire the ecosystem, like Mish spoke about, right? How do I make it self-healing? That should be the core principle of SRE. How do we make sure that it is? We talk about how do systems peacefully exist in the ecosystem. So that is not seen. So automation is not seen here. The other aspect that is quite interesting is probably looking at the entire piece, right? When we talk about site reliability engineering, it's really to make sure that we meet the customer SLAs, SLOs, which means the right kind of alerts and observability, or rather, securing applications is encompassing that fact. But there are key proper tenets that come out of site reliability engineering, like the automation aspect, the observability aspect. So these are not seen here. And of course, performing postmortems, probably again this is some kind of a misunderstanding that probably SREs are going to be taking care of what used to be the change control board from ITSM. So here it's more holistic. They need to, if there are, of course there are incidents and failures, but looking at the root cause, looking at the class of errors and how do we remove the class of errors, right? So that's much beyond than actually performing retrospective. So it looks like a little bit mixed up for me.
Lovely.
Can I comment on Shivagami?
No, I'm sorry, Evelyn. I'm sorry. No. Of course.
Of course, excellent points, Shivagami. And remember, these are just the top 5. So to your comments, so just for the audience, in terms of leveraging SLIs and or using SLIs and SLOs and SLAs, that is in the report. It's 12% of folks who are actually using that in almost everywhere. 24% are using it in several teams, just to mention a few. Couple other things, as you said, in terms of incident management and ITSM and so on. So there are a little bit next levels details, such as documenting and continuously managing knowledge articles. And then last but not least, one I wanted to mention is, I think somebody tossed in the word, I think you were, Mitch, on toil. Of course, measuring toil everywhere, 11%, and in some teams, 21%. So those are additional activities in the report. There's a total of, I believe, 12 or so top to top those which you're seeing here in the slides.
Excellent.
And I think it's important to note as we're moving along that, Google called SRE out as its service management framework. So when we talk about incident management, capacity management, security management, event management, these are very traditional ITIL processes. And SRE takes a different look, perhaps a more lightweight look at these processes, but they're still the same processes. And so all of this and these activities really speak to, I think, traditional IT operations, but now takes it further left into the life cycle. And to me, that's very, very exciting. So it isn't just wait for something to happen and then start making this happen. I think that, when we look at SLOs a little bit later on, I think we're going to see that there has to be a shift in that direction.
Excellent. All right, Evelyn.
Okay, thank you. So the topologies are always interesting. Again, we are talking a little bit about activities. We talked about adoption. Now we want to see how are these teams organized. And this really wasn't a surprise to me, because I think central supporting various products and platforms, 37% said that's how we have structured the SRE model of today. Others decentralized in terms of assigned business products or teams, and decentralized. The one which I think is really a quite interesting one is not just one model. We're leveraging different team structures, and there is some great research by two wonderful individuals out there talking about team topologies, which we have sourced in the document. And I think there is not really one model which is the right model. It really depends on what is happening in the organization, what we have relative to what's going on. And before we go to the poll, I think I'm going to pause and give you, Sam, a chance to feel out the other experts on this. And I'll put the slide back on so we have it right on top of our screen to feel the others for what their thoughts are.
Yeah. So just thinking about how SRE teams, how SRE can be implemented at a company, the fact that you're doing it is interesting, but how is it organized? I was actually kind of surprised that there was not more in a central area. You think about, and somebody asked a good question about, is there tech debt that's built up? Venkata was asking about, is there tech debt built up in the SRE group? And of course, there's debt built up anywhere you have technology or people. You're going to have tech debt or debt built up. I think one of the interesting things about DevOps and this concept of lean and the concept of SRE is that you're constantly trying to improve, because your landscape is always shifting. And so you may not even think about it as trying to get rid of tech debt. You might just think about it as trying to move yourself to the right. Your cheese is moved, so you got to move to where the cheese is. And so when you're moving, as you're migrating or evolving, you're also getting rid of some things. Like, we don't need the appendix anymore. We still have it. Eventually, it just won't show up anymore, so we don't have to have surgery to get rid of it when we're 15. Not that just happened to me, but maybe that happened to everybody. But that's the tech debt that we have, and I think that people find it anywhere. I thought that there would be more people centralizing that because of the economies of scale that you can get from some standardized processes. And in the report, I say that there will be snowflakes. There will always be snowflakes that have to operate differently than other parts of the business. But to get the maximum economies of scale, I would have thought that the central supporting, the 37% there would actually have been bigger. I don't know what other people think. Let's see, Shivagami, you seem like you have a thought.
So yeah, so I think a centralized platform team is key, and I think that is reflected quite well here, and that helps in the the cross fertilization of ideas, bringing in reuse. But the snowflakes that you spoke about, when we talk about autonomous teams and we talk about the other key enablers of transformation. We talk about real empowered autonomous teams, which is why we need to have probably SREs also aligned and they become a product expert, right? Because we cannot have generalized SREs sitting in the central team. When they get embedded into products, they become product specialists. Yeah. So that's the reason why probably there's quite good of focus on decentralization. But having said that, it's a mixed model that we have seen that usually organizations adopt, and which is to have this decentralized SREs embedded within the products, but they still have a thin kind of an umbilical cord tied to the platform team. So what happens is they do bring the sunshine from the different products into the centralized team. And also there are these, cross fertilization of ideas that happen. But finally the SREs do become, they do get the expertise within that particular product, which is very important. As we have seen, right, they're the biggest enablers, and customer experience, customer delight, or customer I mean, again tied to SLAs, the entire the whole philosophy of finally making sure that the business outcomes are met is going to be possible if an SRE becomes an enabler across the life cycle, right? So if we have centralized teams, what we miss out is actually having that complete expertise of that particular product line. So we do see a mix of these things.
Anyone else have comments? Mitch, go ahead.
Yeah, Jane made a really interesting point, a very thoughtful point about it isn't a binary decision, right? It is this or that. There's a lot of in between. It's kind of interesting as you look at this particular data. Basically, 2/3 of the responses fall into it's either centralized or decentralized, and then about a third falls in the bottom part of the chart. In that somewhere in between, whether it's we do it by per team or it's decentralized by component or whatever variation. There's probably even more variations than that, I'm guessing, right?
I think that when you look at it from a team perspective, as long as there's consistency across the processes, that decentralization is not necessarily a bad thing. There are risks to having a centralized team. Then you end up with an office, right? Like an SRE office, which, we've had some experiences in the past, and that creates a silo. So somewhere in between the two, there has to be a consistent thread between all of the teams and activities. One of the questions I get asked very frequently is, what's the ratio of SREs to development teams? Like, because again, SREs sit on those agile teams. What's the ratio? And there is no perfect answer to that. But certainly looking at that, there's never going to be a one-to-one, right? Well, I don't think there'll be a one-to-one SRE to, a particular team. So obviously there has to be some centralization, but again, can't be a cookie cutter, can't be a snowflake. Everything can't be one or the other.
Yeah.
I just have one point here. I've also seen that the kind of roles and responsibilities the SREs play is going to be different between products. So because we have system of records, we have system of engagement, we have different types of products. So their engagement also, when they get assigned to these products and services, is going to be slightly different. So some people concentrate, or some of the SREs really concentrate on making sure that the observability is built in, and some of them are still, into making sure the CI/CD pipelines are put, and the developers are enabled so that they could do zero-touch deployments or something like that. And of course, some of them are really into building this graceful degradation and self-healing. So you would see that the overall principles of SRE and how do we make sure that the business outcomes are met are being done in different ways by different products because of the maturity of the product itself being very different. And to hold them all together, like Jane was mentioning, bringing them all together to have consistency and having the guardrails is also quite key. So a centralized office or a small centralized office with decentralization is something that I've seen being quite successful.
Nice. Well, let's go into our poll. What are some of the challenges that you've experienced if you've implemented SRE out there in chat? What are some of the challenges that you have experienced? 1 or 2 words around it. We're not going to show them up on the screen because we want to make sure that we've got everything suitable for work for folks, but we'll read off what some of the answers are. What are some of the challenges? I had kidney stones last week, so that was one of my challenges, although I was not implementing SRE. I've never implemented SRE anywhere, so I can't really comment, but I trust some of you in the audience can. So what are those things? And I'm going to go into polls and start looking at.
Now we need a little bit of dum 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 dum.
That's right. That's right.
Mitch has his guitars back there to do the SRE song.
The answers are coming in. Leadership, executive buy-in, upper management being on board. These are 3 out of the first 7 that I've seen here. Okay, I'm scrolling down. Having skilled people. This was something I think that I'm not sure if it was Venkata who had asked the question earlier. Right? How do you get the staff and people sort of moving along the lines of understanding SRE and that cultural adoption? Lack of skills. Develop and implement the practice. Getting the right talent. Yeah, some great responses coming in.
Mostly human. Notice that they're mostly human responses. Even management, right? Management, last I checked, were human as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. Yeah. Right. Look at that. I love these responses, chat. Thank you so much for participating. Really interesting that a lot of those answers did revolve around that human element of either skilling or upskilling, which is one of the reasons the DevOps Institute exists, is to help people skill up. It's one of the reasons we did this survey, is to understand where we were as a community, so that not that we can point fingers and be like, ha ha, but so that we can point resources and try and engage and educate folks around these good practices. So this is really great. Really happy to see that. All right, Evelyn.
Yeah, and that is unfortunately beautiful, if that is an oxymoron. Is there an echo? Hopefully that's not me.
That is weird, right?
Yes.
I've just muted myself, but it's still there.
Now it's gone. All right. Excellent. Thank you. So the answers from the audience are not very different from what we found in the research. And again, these are just the top 3. There's many other challenges out there, but as Jane pointed out, there are a lot. Most of the time, the challenges are human challenges. Lack of skill, that's a big one. We know that. Very challenging for the majority, and or for 38%, and somewhat challenging for 47%. Then the second one, value of SRE is not understood. Again, having the challenge to describe what it does and where it fits and how it actually, what outcomes it can actually achieve is always a challenge. And in my almost now 20 years of being an industry analyst, both at Forrester and at the DevOps Institute and another institution, value and value equations and what best practices and frameworks bring is always questioned. And so the caution here is to understand, why are you going down this path? understanding really what are the things you want to fix, as Shivagami was saying, or as we showed, what are some of the key outcomes you want to, of course, it is customer experience and it's of course digital, but what is really the things you want to improve one click below? Because we cannot always talk about, okay, we're going to do a digital journey and we're going to improve that experience. What does that mean? Systems of record, systems of engagements, et cetera, et cetera. And then having no time to implement SRE, I get a little bit mad at this topic, and I'm not going to comment on it because I want to be cautious, because that one is just a bit of a lazy excuse. And I'll stop talking. I'll hand it over to you,
But
Sam.
this actually, there's actually another person in the chat, and I hopefully you don't feel offended that Evelyn just called you lazy. But there is somebody in the chat that said there's always something urgent that takes priority, and this is the situation that I think a lot of teams find themselves in, where they want to improve. They don't have the air cover or the mindset of that continuous improvement. They want to just have it done. Management just wants the SRE implemented. They don't want to have to go about a process of a year or multi-year process. Bruno was mentioning the way that we run SRE at Sumo has evolved. When we started, I'm sure we were nowhere near as sophisticated as we are now. But
it is tough when you're stuck in a whack-a-mole, right? With issues, it's not easy to, it's prevention, right? In medicine, takes effort up front. It's hard to decide that you want to do something when everything's fine, right? So
yes,
I understand that pain.
Yes.
But if there's pain, so here's my question. So, if you look at all three of these, if you have an IT operations organization in your environment, then you can train, right, your existing staff, because you already have folks that are managing your infrastructure. You have folks that are responsible for reliability or resilience. And so I think that, the intention to be able to do that, the value of SRE is equal to the value of IT operations, right? Which is the delivery of value to the end customer. And so, one of the risks I think we have in IT is that we have so many frameworks that after a while we have framework fatigue, and that, this could be perceived as framework of the year or framework of the decade. And so, organizations implemented ITIL and now they're seeing SRE. Is it the same? They're a little off-put or excited, depending on where you are on the engineering aspects of it. But this is all about the value of IT operations, right? The value of your ability to deliver services. And then the last one, like Evelyn, I'm a little frustrated by, but I understand that, is that IT, particularly IT operations post-production, is a very reactive environment, right? Where we're constantly reacting to the next thing and how do we do that? And one of the key principles of SRE is to make tomorrow better than today. So the question is, where do you want to spend your time? Do you allocate half of your team to be able to have time to reduce toil? Because that's what's causing all the fires and whatever. And then so you have some that are reacting, some that are proacting, and then you switch. But the time is being spent. The question is, what's the quality and the outcomes of the time that's being spent? Is it putting out a fire so another fire can occur, or is it spending time reducing toil? And it's an intentional decision, right? It's a business decision to be able to take that
and
steps.
I think part of that equation that's very difficult to define is that, I've never had a boss say, it's okay if you just delay the shipping of that software for a little bit. It's a hard thing for management to say, yeah, let's hold off on delivering that value to market. But the SRE gives you a mechanism to have that conversation and make it a business conversation and say, hey, we're going to slow down our delivery because we're not creating reliable experience for people. We need to shore that up. Or we're going to choose to deliver product faster than operations can sort of absorb it. And we know that we're going to impact customer experience, but we have to get this innovation out because it's really, really important for our business to do it. And so being able to have those conversations with management, I think that I don't think management is ready for that in a lot of cases. They're not used to having those conversations. They don't want to be told that they can't have their cake and eat it too. I want it now, and I want it perfect. Go make it happen. And if not, then I can be angry. And that's sort of a reactive old school mindset, which is not a continuous improvement, sort of collaborating and understanding what the business needs.
I have my 2 cents here. I kind of empathize when people say I don't have the time to implement SRE. Probably they have not understood it, or rather the way it is sold, right? It is sold as if it's a very big transformation program and you need a lot of money, you need a lot of time. It's related to how people understand it. And what we have seen as well is people who can actually take it in. You can have target areas. You could actually select which are your products that you want to really focus on in the beginning, and then derive the value out of it, and then actually look at spreading it out to the entire organization, right? But most of the times, what we see is there is the transformation program. It's probably $100 million or whatever, or is very expensive. And then we're going to go and hire a bunch of really very expensive SREs. We do not know what to do with them once they land. We do not know how to use them. So I think having a real good minimalistic approach in the way how we come with a strategy to adopt SRE itself will, because it's finally about, not about firefighting like what Jane was talking about. It's really about automating. It's really about removing toil, and then saving time, and then implementing like what you were talking about, right? So it's like a lack of understanding, and rather misunderstanding that SRE is a very expensive and very time consuming transformation program, which is why people have responded like this.
Yep. Some great comments coming in the chat. Appreciate all the engagement in the chat as well. Any other thoughts on the top 3 challenges here from either the chat or from the panelists? Otherwise, maybe we'll move on to the next slide. Evelyn, what do you think?
Yeah, we've got 14 minutes left, just keeping an eye on the clock. Great conversations, great comments.
Yeah.
Let's move to a poll here. I think what effects did the shift to an SRE role have for you? What's important here is to think about when you went into this role. Let us know what it did to you. And why we're asking this, because we have an answer from our survey participants. And while you guys are all thinking about either you expanded your skills or you feel more valued as a team member, I'm going to tell you a quick story really, really quickly. When I started out as an IT ops person, my first day on the job with a master's 4.0 graduate, I think Mitch and Jay know this story, but I walked down this aisle of this very large tech company in the United States, and some guy told me, "Hello, you're my new programmer." At that time, programmer was not the right word to say. It wasn't a compliment, because I thought I was a developer, or I was a case tool developer, some hotshot, and that really caused me some challenges at the time. And I've been in IT ops for a long time, left and moved into an analyst position. So let's see what the poll comes back, and if you are an SRE, maybe it did something to you, and then we'll share with you what our survey respondents have said. Let's see. The man behind the curtains again. Fantastic work here. Let me just comment on that. Or you wanted to, Sam? Doesn't really matter.
No.
All right. So we're seeing, as you guys are still responding, these numbers will change, but expanded my skills and capabilities. That is music to all of our ears and hearts, of course. I'm much more engaged and excited about my work. I feel more valued as a team member, 9%, and then I feel valued and appreciated. That's beautiful, and particularly either in the great reshuffle, great renegotiation, or great resignation, no matter what country you're in. Those are the actual 3 terms I've heard. We do need to make sure we have some exciting, some work which is fulfilling and can help us. So Let's look at,
And that's,
then
you know,
I'll
I want to just take 1 second and just look
Sure.
back to the challenges. The biggest challenges was what? Lack of skills.
Yeah.
And the top benefit is more skills.
Yeah.
And yes, Suresh, 3 and 4 were sort of duplicative. That's true. But that's great. So the SRE is actually the process itself, the framework, even though there could be framework fatigue, this operating framework helps to inculcate those skills in the people that are actually practicing those practices. So it's sort of a virtuous cycle. If you can get your team on that treadmill, as Jane mentioned, we all know working out's good for us. Get them on that treadmill and they're going to be better off for it.
Beautifully said. And I think the slide summarizes that. The results are exactly that, Sam. You are a fantastic analyst. I don't need to say anything more. I'm going to just leave the slide up and open it up to the panel on other thoughts from folks there.
So, Shivagami, the question for you, I guess, when you are working with various teams, I mean, do you see a difference in personnel, sort of how they lean into projects, whether they have SRE teams versus whether they're a more traditionally organized IT team?
Yeah, so I do see a big shift actually. So this is fundamental in breaking the silo kind of mentality that people have, because now people are looking at the end game, which is actually give business value and to improve operational excellence and reliability. But what is internally happening is they have to actually broker this with a number of people, right? Starting from product managers, talking about, you spoke about error budgets and technical debt and how do I make the entire service more reliable, working with the developers to make sure that the developers understand about what are the problems that we would face in operations. So bringing that wisdom, and then working on automation, building observability, distributed tracing. All these things are, I mean, from a personal, a professional development point of view, I have seen people evolve so much that they talk about in a very holistic manner. So previously, if we had to attend what we saw about retrospectives or post implementation review or things like that, it would be about people talking about their own areas, right? So the ops guy, the DBA talks about something that happened in his place. Developer comes, he has no clue about what the other guy is talking. It's very different now. A retrospective is so fulfilling. People really understand what's happening in the entire product life cycle. So I think from a human perspective, it's this overall enriching experience that people are getting. And also the organizations are getting more closer. There's so much of bonding that happens within the team. So I feel SRE culturally is doing a lot more good than the technology side.
Lovely. It's all about people, the human stack. It's kind of an important one. Awesome. Any other thoughts from the panelists?
There we go again. All right, let's move on. That's the beat. That's, I think, the beat. All right. Boom. Let's move to automation. Shivagami mentioned it. There is, of course, importance in automation. And again, please know that these are just the top 3 answers. There's many much more. That's a German Dinglish. That's a Dinglish term. What are the current automation tools leveraged within your SRE team? Of course, these are the 3 ITSM, observability, monitoring, and performance management tools currently implementing, continuously implementing, reworking, or transforming, planning, and not implemented. And you can see, to the beauty of all of us, currently implementing, continuously implementing, and transforming, the percentages here. I'll leave that slide up and I'll just close it because I know there are some passionate comments from the folks, I'm sure, here on the panel. Jane, I think you have one I know you want to make.
Well, and I find it really fascinating about the ITSM ticketing systems, but it makes perfect sense. As long as the ITSM tools are being leveraged in an SRE way, because one of the challenges with traditional incident management is that it was a very linear approach, right? You got the ticket. I ran a service desk for many years. You got the ticket, you worked on it, you escalated it, they escalated it, you captured it in the tool. So hopefully, things in SRE like incident command systems and things like that are being replicated in these tools, but it makes good sense. Observability, one of the most interesting patterns, trends, tools out there. I know, of course, our friends at Sumo Logic are very, very engaged with observability. I think that's fascinating as well. And of course, monitoring and performance tools don't go away. So again, but remember, SRE is ITSM. I beat that drum pretty frequently because it is incident management, change management, all of that we traditionally think of as ITIL, but it is service management, and I think this reflects that.
Mitch, Bruno, thoughts on this? That is the weirdest thing.
And I don't think it's me, but I'll mute.
I think it's Mitch.
It's the music man.
Guitars are singing.
That is weird.
So,
go ahead, Bruno.
I guess I'll take the mic then, since Mitch has an Yeah, look, it's really interesting, and even in this, I'll leave the ITSM tools. I mean, it clearly makes sense that these technologies are important and part of it. It's interesting about two bottom rows: observability, monitoring, performance management tools. Effectively, that's the sort of the old world and the new world of monitoring performance management tools, right? Markets evolving from individual tools into observability platforms, and I think it's interesting to see that they're basically the same, right? In what's being leveraged, which makes sense. I would expect to see, as the time progresses, that more of this will shift into observability, just because that's how we call and talk about these things these days. So I'm not surprised by this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe the overlap in these might be just a misunderstanding of what those two concerns are, because there's a lot of overlap between them for sure. And Mitch, I don't know what's happening with your audio, but I appreciate you just plugging away on chat, just so everyone in chat knows that now you're on equal footing as Mitch. So feel free to share your thoughts. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Sorry, Mitch, that you have
he's going to try and rejoin.
Yeah.
Next, we can move. I think we move to the next one. We have 2 minutes left, and I still need to tell people who won the Amazon gift.
Exactly. All right. So we've got some takeaways. I'm not going to read them all to you. I do think we do know it's an operating model for collaboration. It is an engineering function which is going to take hold in many organizations, more to come. It is not its own silo, but it should reduce silos, because I saw some hints there in chat. Helps achieve credibility within both Dev and Ops. It helps to uplift the customer experience, and it excites people. For me, as a professional IT Ops stepped out of the job, this excitement is fantastic. The report itself also points to is not just that, you can actually make a little bit more money also, but I didn't say that. All right. Sam, back to you.
Lovely. Yeah, this has really been a fantastic panel. I've really appreciated seeing all the comments in chat. There are a few special folks I want to call out who have won our Amazon gift card: Rich B, Cynthia B, Seth H, and Patrice C. Look for an email from our friends at devops.com for fulfillment. But really, I just want to thank Jane and Evelyn and the DevOps Institute team for this wonderful research and for letting us participate. I want to thank Shivagami for taking time out of her evening to come and join us and represent that practitioner mindset, the folks who are out there making this stuff happen for people all the time. And Bruno and Mitch, as always, it's great having you join us as well. We'll see you all next month. We're actually taking a break. Sumo Logic has our Illuminate user conference. If you are a user of Sumo Logic, please join us. If you are not, sign up for a free trial of Sumo Logic and then join our free user conference. We would be happy to have you join us then too. And we'll see you in October, where I believe the topic is going to be DevSecOps. So look forward to that one. And then Mitch Ashley, check iTunes for the SRE song. Yeah, it's just that. There you go. All right. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and go download the report. That's right. Thank you, Patrice.
Yeah, please download the report. There's a lot of really great data. And if you're interested in education, DevOps Institute does have 2 SRE certifications. Shivagami led the SRE practitioner efforts. So learn more about that as well. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Sumo Logic, as always, for your support. Mitch, so good to see you again. Shivagami, thanks for the evening. Evelyn, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.